LTTV, Blunt Talk with LT, back at it with another video. Alright, make sure you hit the like button upon entry. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Hit that notification bell so you're up on all the live streams when we get live. And yeah, just make sure you hit that like button if y'all don't want to see When Men Stop Simping 64 and Modern Women episode 74. Like, you know what I mean? You don't want to be caught in those algorithm videos where people are just stuck in that content creator mode because they don't got the support from their fans to create the type of content that they want to see outside of the algorithm chasing cycle. We ain't doing that. So make sure you hit the like button. The support goes a long way. All right, let's get into this one. Y'all requested this. Y'all wanted this. Candace Owens talking about George Floyd. Now, every time I do a Candace Owens reaction, there's comments about what she said about George Floyd. And people outraged, and the coverage that I missed the coverage of George Floyd by Candace Owens. So let's get into this. Let's cover it now.
So anytime a customer brings a counterfeit bill, you see we have plenty of them. We tell them, hey, this is a counterfeit.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Yep. Let's try this again.
Whoa!
Huh. All right, let's try this one more time.
Whoa!
So anytime a customer brings a counterfeit bill, you see we have plenty of them. We tell them, hey, this is counterfeit. If the customer insists, then we call the police.
How did you feel watching the trial?
I thought it was a sham.
All right, so I just want to start it with just you stating your name for the record, as well as your professional background.
I have been a police officer in the state of Minnesota for almost 4 decades.
Forensic criminologist and certified medical investigator, police practices expert.
Yeah, some good moments here. It's like we lived together almost, I guess, it was about 4.5 years, almost 5 years.
So you guys, in many ways, were some of the people that were the closest to him. And I don't remember seeing your faces on the news or anybody talking to you. So I guess let's just start with that. You guys knew him best. So who was George Floyd? Hello, Facebook family. I have decided to do this video. It has been weighing very heavily on my heart and on my mind as well. And it was something that I wanted to say early on, but there were so many emotions and so much pressure for me to go with the popular opinion about who George Floyd was. And sometimes it can be difficult when there are just so many external pressures to say what you believe. And this was an instance where I felt like my silence would have been better in the beginning, but the more that I think about it, I realize that we are being sold a lot of lies, and at the detriment to the Black community, at the detriment to the white community, and at the detriment to America as a whole. So I want to come out and say that I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. I'm going to explain why, and I hope that some of you guys will understand where I'm coming from. I have spent a considerable amount of time reading a lot of Black authors that I think are some of the most brilliant Black Americans breathing. Walter Williams, Shelby Steele.
Now, are y'all experiencing any delay, any chippiness, or buffering? Let me know.
Thomas Sowell, and I recently came across something that was an idea that was planted into my head by Shelby Steele, and it has been something that I cannot forget. It is something that will stick with me for the rest of my life, and it is something that I hope for the Black Americans that are watching will stick with you for the rest of your life. Shelby Steele.
All right, so this is a long... Said it's good now. I don't know about this. This is a long presentation. I don't want to deal with no lag during this. We have a lot to cover here.
Steele said that the Black community is unique from other communities. Our culture is unique from other communities because we are the only community
that caters to the bottom denominator of our society. Now, let me explain what that means. It means to say that not every Black American is a criminal, not every Black American is committing crimes, but we are unique in that we are the only people that fight and scream and demand support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good. You would be hard pressed to find, a Jewish person who has spent 5 stints in prison, who commits a crime and dies while committing a crime, and that the Jewish people champion and demand justice for. You will be hard pressed to find this in white America. You'll be hard pressed to find this even in Latino America. If there is a person that is spent multiple times in prison, you are not going to see a bunch of Latinos coming out demanding justice for this person, even if, and I want to be very clear, what I'm saying is not any defense for Derek Chauvin. I hope Derek Chauvin gets the justice that he deserves to be, implemented upon him, and that the family of George Floyd deserves justice for the way that he died. But I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the Black community has to offer.
Candace, joining us, your thoughts on the guilty verdict, guilty on all charges?
It's the wrong verdict, in my opinion, and I think that it's indicative of the fact that we now live in mob rule. This is mob rule society. I mean, this is based on the evidence that we saw, and this was polluted from start to finish, so...
What?
All right, so we got a little bit of double talk here. I don't understand this. Both of these cannot be true. You can't be outraged at the verdict and then say he deserves justice. And the outrage that she has from the verdict is, it's seemingly that she doesn't believe that he should have gotten the time that he got. Although he has a state charge and a federal charge, both served concurrently. Not one after the other, served concurrently, which... what's the point of those years? It's not extra years. If you're serving 10 and 10, it's just you're serving 10 then.
This is the best the Black community has to offer.
Candace, joining us, your thoughts on
didn't go
that
far
he
enough.
died, but I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best. The family of George Floyd deserves justice for the way that he died, but I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the Black community has to offer.
Candace, joining us, your thoughts on the guilty verdict, guilty on all charges?
It's the wrong verdict, in my opinion, and I think that it's indicative of the fact that we now live in mob rule. This is mob rule society. I mean, this is based on the evidence that we saw, and this was polluted from start to finish. So to me, the most important element of this, which I found to be astonishing, was the fact that they never released the full police footage. They had it, they sat on it, they locked it down. It leaked months and months later after the riots, via the Daily Mail, I think. But when I watched the full tape, I was astonished that they didn't think to just at least add this context so that people understood, yes, this person was high out of his mind. He asked to be put on the ground. He was resisting arrest. Let's not forget what the media, what they did, the power they had in setting up this narrative to begin with. First, the media said he was just getting his life together. Do you remember St. George?
Yeah, they do
you
this
guys
all the
remember
time,
St. George, right? He was just getting his life together. He had moved to Minnesota. Yes, he was, had been in prison in the past, but he was just helping the youth. And everyone was crying, and it was, oh my gosh, this man is, was getting a second chance at life, and, maybe had the wrong ID or whatever it was using counterfeit bills, and somebody called the police, and then he was killed. He was brutally murdered on the basis of him being black. No indication, nothing was said out of Derek Chauvin's mouth that, should insinuate that this was about being black versus white, but that was what the media ran with. And then they successfully hid every piece of evidence that would have transformed public opinion, right? Every piece of evidence that would have said, wait a second, there's more here. And they were upset when I released a video and just went over his track record, because it was clear to me, according to his track record, that it was very unlikely that a person that spends, approximately 9 stints in prison was really just getting his life together after having served the last one. So, to me, I think the saddest part of this is that what we need to acknowledge is that right now, mob rules. The media creates the mob, and the mob rules, and that's what we just saw play out.
For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last...
Now, let me just make sure this is running smoothly.
What we need to acknowledge is that right now, mob rules. The media creates the mob, and the mob rules, and that's what we just saw play out.
For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years.
All right, yeah, she completely missed the mark on this one. She missed the greater point here. She keeps talking about his record and how he was a shitty person and blah, 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 ex-convict. I don't think people were making the point of how great of a person George Floyd was. It does not give the cops the right to become the executioner and give him the death penalty in the middle of the street. This was a human's rights issue that black people were up in arms about. Of course, a black man was killed in the streets by the cops. Regardless of how, we don't care the level of criminal that he was. He could have been the greatest person in the world or the worst. He was not charged. He was not sentenced to a death penalty. You can't just do that in the streets. We don't care how bad they are in that aspect. She's missing that point. So TG says that is heartless. Basically, if you are a criminal, your life doesn't matter. That's pretty much what she's saying. So when criminals kill other criminals or other hood niggas kill other hood niggas, it doesn't matter either. It's life lost. Who cares? She missed that point. Nobody was ever acting like he was a saint. He was the greatest person in the world. He didn't get that Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James disclaimer that he always gives LeBron, where he's like, he's a great husband, he's a great father, great businessman, great all that stuff before he even criticizes anything about him, because you know how some LeBron James fans are a little bit sensitive about criticism. I'm a LeBron James fan myself, but you know, some of us are sensitive of the criticism, so he needs to do that shit sometimes. This ain't that. Nobody's saying any of that stuff. Let's get back into it before I give my full breakdown.
For us to turn criminals into heroes overnight. And it is something that I find to be despicable.
She says criminals into heroes overnight. He was the person that was killed. They had the footage. He was on the ground for 7-8 minutes with a knee on his neck. He was the one that died. He wasn't a hero. He was the one that the injustice was done to. He was the symbol of injustice because it was done to him, regardless of how great of a person he was. At this point, it's like, what are we competing for? Like, is this I don't get it.
And there's something that I refuse to stand by any longer, and I am not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from black liberals.
My bad, y'all. I gotta adjust some of these things. These volumes ain't right. She kind of low.
And black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be black.
My bad, y'all. Should have restarted this. I knew I should have restarted this in the starting when it was giving me a bit of a lag. It is what it is.
And I'm not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from black liberals and black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be black, is you have to say this was wrong and that this person was amazing. I won't do that. George Floyd was not an amazing person. And as soon as this video hit the internet, I did just basic searches. Everyone jumped on it and was looking at the police officer, and everyone agrees that the police officer was wrong and the police officer has been arrested. So that is not, the reason I'm not discussing that is because that is not something that has been misconstrued in the media. He has been turned into the devil that he is, and there is no reason for us to harp on that any longer, because white Americans are not uplifting Derek Chauvin as a victim or pretending that he's an amazing human being. But George Floyd is being uplifted as an amazing human being. And for those of you who have not yet seen the clip.
All right, so there's a huge difference between George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. All right, so let me break it down for you, Miss Candace Owens. George Floyd was the person that was murdered. Yes, he was a drug addict. Yes, he was a past criminal. But he was not the murderer. Nobody's going to look at the murderer swimmingly, glowingly, or have anything positive to say about the murderer. We're not going to do it. Black, white, Asian, Spanish, it don't matter.
clips and did not pursue or wait for more clips to come out. First and foremost, George Floyd at the time of his arrest was high on fentanyl and he was high on methamphetamine. This came back in both.
We don't care.
Let me tell you, we don't care.
If he was giving counterfeit bills and doing things that would break the laws and pretty much
Go to jail, you son of a bitch! All right, hold him there. You go to jail!
that's the only power the cops got, to bring him to jail if he's doing something illegal. Executing him in the street, we ain't having that. It's not even a black issue. This is a human issue, a human's rights issue. The cops don't have that power. We're not giving the cops that power and freedom to do that.
Of his autopsy reports. If you pursue the 911 transcript, you can see the person describing somebody who is out.
Did I say humans' rights? Nigga.
Out of their mind high, and which is what made the person fearful, because he tried to use a bill that I guess was a fake bill to purchase something, and then he was outside acting weird, and they in their police call said that this person was obviously distorted and on drugs. When he is put into handcuffs and is put against the wall, a baggie of what looks to be like cocaine or it's white.
We don't care.
Let me tell you, we don't care.
It's a white baggie that he drops onto the floor that you can see in an image. If you look up the clip, the media is refusing to circulate it. You can find it on Twitter. If you use DuckDuckGo and look up George Floyd baggie, you can watch the clip yourself with your own eyes. He had drugs on him at the time of his arrest. Now, barring all of that, nobody thinks that he should have died during this arrest, but what I find despicable to be is that everyone is pretending that this man lived a heroic lifestyle when he didn't, and I want to talk about what his lifestyle was leading up to this moment and why I refuse to accept the narrative that this person...
Now, to keep it a stack, this sounds like a fraudulent narrative that I never heard during this time. I didn't hear people acting like George Floyd was a saint and he was somebody to be revered like that. I don't recall that happening during this time or even now.
Person is a martyr or should be lifted up in the black community, and that we should be buying t-shirts with his name on it, okay?
People still do not know what happened on the day that George Floyd died. They've never even seen any video outside of the 9-minute video.
I don't even like the way she phrases it, on the night or the day George Floyd died. You mean the day that George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin? Murdered. Died is like natural death, health issues. Murdered.
That was played over and over and over again on loop, and they purposefully held back just releasing the police cam, which would have cleared up so many of the lies.
And it's amazing the emotional power of the narrative as opposed to the truth, the story they tell. Joe Biden, a man who has been in government since the 1970s, got on television and said, we are an inherently racist society, an inherently racist government. He basically talked about this trial as if it were difficult to get a conviction of a police officer who has killed a person, which just isn't true.
Now, the racism component comes in where they're like, black lives are cheap. Police officers are quicker to kill a nigga than they're quicker to kill anybody else. It would have to be like extreme circumstances for them to kill other races of people. They're quicker to kill niggas. Yeah, they kill other motherfuckers, but they're quicker to kill niggas. Let's be real. We're not gonna sit here and lie. Especially when they can get away with it. I'm literally like the one person in the media right here on this internet, on YouTube, that they can't lie to about this shit. I've covered so much of it. So much of the police brutality videos and police framing motherfuckers and all sorts of shit like that. I've covered it all. I'm the last person where they're going to try to finesse and try to act like black lives aren't cheap to the cops. They're quick to do what they want to do. It's like these people aren't all saints that they're doing it to, but that does not matter. None of that's relevant. We don't care if they're a criminal. You don't have the right to just kill them if it's not no self-defense type of thing. They're not armed. You don't have that right. We don't care how shitty of a person they are.
isn't true. If you have the testimony, if you have the evidence, you can convict a police officer in this country. He was talking as if it were 40 years ago. People were weeping in the streets when this verdict came in, as if it were not a done deal, as if it wasn't the Derek Chauvin who was the guy under pressure. It's amazing how completely the press working.
Nah, he's being disingenuous as fuck. We're not going to do no revisionist history. I was there. I remember these times. Not very long ago. When shit like this happens, often it gets shoved under the rug and there's no justice. There's always an excuse that lets the cop off the hook. So, of course, people were outraged and pushing that media outrage until they actually tried them fairly. It's like if the media outrage led to a fair trial, then bravo. I don't like media outrage influencing a trial, but if it led to a fair trial, what are we doing here?
Together with the left, has sold this narrative that this is a racist country. I lived out of this country for most of the 90s. This is the least racist country on the face of the planet.
You would think that former Vice President Joe Biden would acknowledge the fact that America is not a backwards racist country.
This nigga said that with his chest out. With his chest out, America is the least racist country? One more time.
This is the least racist country on the face of the planet.
You would think that former Vice President
I didn't hit a drop that's installed in the video.
Joe Biden would acknowledge the fact that America is not a backwards racist country as he stood next to the first black man to be elected as president of the United States 2 times, right? This is a majority white country, 60% white country. It would not have happened. Barack Obama would have never been president had it not been for the fact that America has moved on from race, but they don't want us to move on from race anymore, and that's exactly where we're getting at.
That's all they've got.
And I want to get to this tweet because I was...
This is just a bad take from Candace Owens. She keeps going into the race component of it. It's like the officer killed a citizen. We're not going to gloss over it. We don't care which race is outraged by it. Folks are outraged by what we've seen. It's a bad take by her all the way around.
So physically nauseated by it. It was from the mayor of Minnesota. He says, ready, George Floyd came to Minneapolis to better his life, but ultimately his life will have bettered our city. The jury joined in a shared conviction that has animated Minneapolis for the last 11 months. They refused to look away and affirmed he should still be here today. Brandon, Minneapolis to better his life. When you want to better your life, how much fentanyl do you take?
Simon says, I don't know how much fentanyl he's taking to write a tweet like this. If you want to better your life, I think you would start by not using drugs and trying to buy stuff with fake money and resisting arrest from police officers. I don't know what world we live in. Right. Why are these people so lame?
They're just lying.
They're just making up stuff to stoke hatred and vitriol in our country. That guy was a thug. That guy was a criminal. That guy was using drugs. He's not an example of anybody. He don't represent me as a black man.
And I hate that. I want to point that out. I hate.
Doesn't represent any of us as a black man. He's his own man he was. They keep saying he's a thug, he's a criminal. What is the relevance of that? If he was doing something illegal, take him to jail or charge him for what you think he's doing illegal. There is no just killing a nigga in the street. How many times do I gotta say that?
When people say to me, how do you not see yourself in George Floyd? How do you not see your brother, your cousin? I don't know. My brother and my cousins aren't ingesting fentanyl, resisting. Why would I see myself in George Floyd? What person goes, I really see myself in this drug addict and this person?
What they see in that situation is a human being apprehended by the cops, and the cops taking their own liberty into keeping their knee on his neck for 7.5 minutes, leading to his death. So, wrongdoing or not, you have police run-ins. Things can happen. That's what you see. You see somebody saying, "We don't care about this life. We value your life less." And you and everybody on this panel, and Candace Owens in specific, is making a concerted effort to devalue his life. He was a thug. He was a criminal. He was on fentanyl. We don't care about him, pretty much. Fuck him. He could have just died. Why is any of that necessary? No one's painting him as a saint. They're just using They're using the argument of everyone's painting him as a saint. People are trying to revere him. People are acting like he was the perfect person. They're using that as a veil to make an argument against him as a person and go in on him and completely roast him, talk about all the bad things he's done as a person, to assassinate his character. They're using it as a veil, as an excuse. Oh, people are making this argument, so we're going to make this counter argument to show you how bad he is, and this is the rebuttal. No, that's bullshit. No one's making that argument. You just want to say what you want to say. So you're coding it in this bullshit ass argument.
Person that's been arrested and faced jail stints 9 times. Why am I forced to see myself because, we have a similar melanin complexion?
It tells you what they think of you, though.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they feel that's representative.
Well, and his name is now forever synonymous with justice, according to our Speaker of the House. How little must they think of the American people to have that as the hallmark of everything we should be looking at?
You know what that shows? You know what that says? But for him to be a symbol of justice, it shows that so many people were killed in cold blood and got no justice, and somebody that y'all count out as a deplorable human being got justice. That's why it's a symbol, because so many people got killed by the cops. We have footage. We have excuses. We've had extensive breakdowns, all on Blunt Talk with LT. We've seen this.
Towards to better our life and the end goal of where we should achieve things.
Yeah, what happened to the lady that he had at gunpoint, that they did a home invasion? Where's their justice? What happened to the people, who he probably was selling drugs to? What happened to his family? He's in another city. His family don't live there. Mm-hmm. How is this man the spokesperson of justice?
Yeah.
How is the movement today synonymous with justice when you look at what Martin Luther King did? They didn't beat people up, kill people, burn buildings, loot Louis Vuitton. They weren't doing those things.
Justice has gotten a makeover since the time of Martin Luther King. I'll tell you that for sure. And it's really despicable to see.
It's a reflection of society.
The way they are mischaracterizing him. I don't care what you think about him, whether you think that Derek Chauvin should have been guilty. The idea that this man should be hailed as a hero should be sickening to every single American.
So here we have, first and foremost, let's start from the bottom of his record. And by the way, I am not saying that if you have a record, you don't deserve a second chance. I think people get arrested, and some people can serve time in prison, and I believe in second chances, but I do draw the line when it comes to second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth chances. 1998, he spent 10 months in prison for theft with a firearm. That was the first prison stint that I could find on him. In 2002, he spent 8 months in prison for a cocaine offense. In 2004, just 2 years later, he spent another 10 months in prison for a cocaine offense. In 2005, he spent another 10 months in prison for having less than 1 gram of cocaine on him again. In 2007, and this was the biggest instant that I had that made me realize this was a horrible human being that I am not going to pretend was a good person. In 2005, a woman who was pregnant received a knock at the door, and she went to the door, and the person pretended to be someone that worked for the water department. So she opened her door and quickly realized that the person at her door did not work for the water department and attempted to slam it. At the moment that she was attempting to slam it, a Ford pulled up and another 5 men jumped out of the car, and one of which was George Floyd, came up to the door, and they forced their way inside to her home, inside of her home. Mind you, this woman is pregnant. At that point, George Floyd took out a gun and pressed it to her stomach.
Now, it sounds like she's making an argument for George Floyd being murdered. Like, who cares about this guy? He did all of these things. Look how bad this thing is. Oh, we have an example again. Oh, he did this to a pregnant woman. Oh, you shouldn't want him on the planet. Who cares about him? Y'all shouldn't be rallying for. That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like to me.
She was screaming, begging for her life, and he put her inside of her living room and instructed one of his criminal friends that was with him to watch her and to make sure she didn't leave the living room. So he was playing guard while they ransacked her home looking for drugs and money. They did not find drugs. They ended up taking, I believe, her wallet and her cell phone. Fortunately for her, her neighbor observed what was going on and caught the license plate of the people as they pulled off and called 911. And when 911 was able to, they were able to track down the car of which George Floyd was the driver, and they arrested him. And 2 years later, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for that instance.
So you see that, right? He did something bad. And what happened to him? He got arrested and charged, and he served time in jail. Consequences for his actions.
Learn the rules.
Doesn't mean you get to kill him because of he did all that shit in the past, and he was high trying to use some counterfeit, so you get to kill him because he done all that. What happened to serving your time?
Now, you can say the media is portraying it like he was just getting his life together after, being released in 2014 following that incident. He was just getting his life together and moved and was going to start afresh. I'd like to believe all of those things, and there's a gap, and he never got in trouble for 5 years until this incident when the police were called on him again. But you are defying common sense to believe that this person suddenly became an exemplary character but happened to be high on fentanyl and methamphetamine and trying.
Whole thing is we don't care about that. We're not denying any of that. None of that's relevant. That's the point she's missing.
To use a bill, a fake bill to purchase something, and some character, but happened to be high on fentanyl and methamphetamine, and trying to use a bill, a fake bill to purchase something. And so, in my opinion, George Floyd was a criminal. He was a criminal. And just because he was a criminal doesn't mean he deserved to die at the knee of a police officer. But it does mean that I am not going to play a part of the broken black culture that always wants to martyr criminals, who wants to pretend they were these upstanding human beings that just wanted to help society, that just wanted to reach out and uplift society. And he has a rap sheet that is long, that is dangerous. He was an example of a violent criminal his entire life. Okay, up until the very last moment. Now, again, I want to be clear. This is not a defense for Derek Chauvin. No one that I have spoken to, no one in the news is defending Derek Chauvin. He is getting what he has coming to him. Okay, great. But why are we pretending that this criminal should be upheld as a citizen, as a martyr in Black America? A martyr for a fake narrative, by the way. Police brutality, racially motivated police brutality is a myth. Okay, so let's get into that. Not only are we using this death, right, and allowing it to cause these riots and protests, pretending this was some upstanding citizen in the Black community who was tackled down and killed for no reason, right? Not only are we allowing it to inspire riots in which Black people are dying, in which actually.
Now, I'm looking for this, as I'm reacting to this and listening to this, I'm looking for the stat that came out on the Toronto police. There was a Toronto police stat that came out that said that they were, what is it? I'm trying to remember if it was 20 times or 200 times more likely to pull over and harass a Black person. They got the stats behind it, the number. This is Toronto. Now, Toronto's not America, but I've been to American cities. Some of them, it seems like it's kind of the same. It's not too much more racist, and then others stand out where it's much more racist, and you feel it. It's different. It's not a huge concern. It's not the primary issue of American citizens. It's not the only thing Black people should care about when it comes to voting. We shouldn't be just, looking at these candidates like, look, what are you doing about racism? That's not paramount. But at the end of the day, to act like it doesn't exist is just absolute, it's bullshit. It's delusion. We ain't doing that. I'm going to get that stat. I want to find out.
Upstanding Black citizens are dying. Case in point, I'm sure you guys have all now seen David, the sheriff that just was shot and killed because he was trying to protect a pawn shop. Please look him up if you haven't seen it. I'm blanking on his last name. His first name is David, who was shot and killed for trying to protect.
Hello and welcome. And we can just get right into this because you know what we are going to cover today. We obviously have to cover the George Floyd trial conclusion, which is that Derek Chauvin is guilty on all counts. And I have to appreciate people that were trying to create a pressure campaign for me on Twitter saying, I wonder what Candace is going to say. Even Republicans agreed that this was the right call. I don't care who agrees that this was the right. I don't care if it's a Republican. I don't care if it's a Democrat. I don't care if it's a white person. I don't care if it's a black person. I am not so much of an intellectual coward that because the mob decides something, because the lie about George Floyd and the way that he lived his life has become so big that we just have to now accept it as the truth. And believe me, this is a lie.
There she goes again, making this argument. George Floyd and the way he lived his life. I'm pretty sure that was not the concern of many folks. Not the concern at all. Maybe the media pushed that out to get more support for people to actually be outraged at the matter, because some people don't give a fuck when, they listen to people like Candace Owens talk about how much of a drug addict and a criminal he was. When you hear that all day, you might not feel sympathetic to even be outraged to what happened. But what actually happened was a police officer took liberty into his own hands and killed a citizen. We're not ignoring that.
Nancy Pelosi yesterday has become so big that we just have to now accept it as the truth. And believe me, this is a lie. Nancy Pelosi yesterday said, quote, "Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice." She also said, quote, that his name will always be synonymous with justice. George Floyd's name will always be synonymous with justice. You have got to be kidding me. And don't tell me it doesn't matter. It does matter. This is the most important part, that he...
We're in a different era. Get over it. Whoa!
When you're betrayed by your system and it fails your drops, that killed the dramatic effect of the drop. God damn it. All right, so is there something weird going on? I got to pause this real quick. There's something weird going on. Why are there comments popping up in the chat on the screen, but not in the actual chat? What's going on with that? Is YouTube censoring y'all? Are y'all saying some fuck shit? Words are too small on my screen. I can't even see what the fuck. That didn't seem like anything bad. Candace Owens and what? I can't see that shit. Or against black people. That doesn't seem like the... Nah, they shouldn't. That should have been able to slide. Yeah, YouTube tripping out here. YouTube is tripping.
He is now becoming synonymous with justice. Let me remind you guys, I've done it before, right? When the media was spinning all the lies, when the media first came out and they said, oh, George Floyd was just getting his life together. He moved to Minnesota. He got released from prison in 2014. He was just getting his life together. You remember that? Do you guys remember that media depiction of St. George, who was just doing things for kids and just loved the kids and really was trying to set a good example and was just getting his life together? Until I reminded people of what his actual record was, because it became apparent to me that there was a reason that they were not producing the police footage, because they wanted to make sure that the lie was perpetuated around the world and repeated over and over again before the truth could get up from bed and put its shoes on. And here is the truth. Here is the person whose life and whose name is now synonymous with justice, Nancy Pelosi. George Floyd has a rap sheet, and I'm going to remind you guys of it again today. He was arrested for delivery of a controlled substance. He was arrested and put into jail. He was arrested for theft. He was arrested for theft again. He spent 10 months and 10 days in jail. He was arrested for failure to identify. He spent 15 days.
Now, on how many different platforms did she repeat his arrest record? Y'all have to understand something. This is a quick compilation that I gathered and edited between the last show that I did earlier today when somebody was, I can't remember who was in the chat that was saying or making point to what she said about George Floyd. And I was like, what did she say? What did she say? So I went and looked for it. And I'm like, I got to react to this live. But how many different times did she bring up his arrest record? It's not at the top of the relevance.
Days in jail. He was again arrested for possession of a controlled substance, less than 1 gram of cocaine.
Christ,
he was in jail. He was arrested for failure to identify. He spent 15 days in jail. He was again arrested for possession of a controlled substance, less than 1 gram of cocaine. He was then arrested for trespassing, no forcible entry. He was arrested for delivery of a controlled substance. He was arrested for possession with intent to manufacture or distribute, another 30 months in jail total. He was arrested for aggravated robbery with a dangerous and deadly weapon. And that has really got to be the most significant arrest for me because of how sick what he did was. Ready? Here's a statement. At this time, a black Ford Explorer pulled up in front of the complainant's residence. The complainant that we're talking about, the woman, had somebody knock on her door and say that they were from the water department. And then that person forced their way into her home. And then a Ford Explorer pulled up. And there were 5 other black males that exited this vehicle and proceeded to the front door. The largest of these suspects forced his way into the residence. This is George Floyd. Forced his way into the residence, placed a pistol against the complainant's abdomen, and forced her into the living room area of the residence. The large suspect then proceeded to search the residence while another armed suspect guarded the complainant, who was struck in the head and side areas by the second armed suspect with his pistol after she screamed for help. I should also mention that there was a toddler in the residence at the time that this happened. A toddler that was traumatized by what George Floyd did. A woman who was traumatized by what George Floyd did. Various people who were traumatized throughout the life of George Floyd. He left a wake of victims. That is what happened. He had so many victims throughout his life, but right now, the world has decided that he's just a wonderful human being. You're not allowed.
Nope. Never said that. We have never said that. But you haven't said in this, at least in this video, that he served time for all these things and his death was not warranted. You left that part out, but continue.
Talk about his record. Not allowed to talk about any of things. There are children that are running around with George Floyd shirts. There are murals that have been constructed dedicated to George Floyd because his name has now become synonymous with justice. I guess my question is, justice for who? How do I do that? How do I live a life so that people say Candace Owens' name is synonymous for justice? It's not telling the truth. People hate that. People say you're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to talk about who this person actually was because the media has agreed on a narrative before the truth has gotten out about who this man was. Getting his life together. Is anybody still buying that anymore? Oh, no, never mind. It actually turns out that at the time of his arrest, he had fentanyl in his system. He also had methamphetamine in his system. We also learned that the week prior he had an overdose. But none of that matters because now we live under mob rule. Mob rule just says that if a black man dies and a white person is around while that black person dies, it is a racially motivated crime. They've never proved that. Nothing about this was about.
What? What kind of disingenuous argument is that? Are you kidding me? What, ma'am?
Man dies and a white person is around while that black person dies, it is a racially motivated crime. They've never proved that. Nothing about this was about race at all. But it doesn't matter because now George Floyd has been propped up, and this is what we have to agree on. Nobody's allowed to tell the truth. Why are they doing this? Why can't we honestly have an assessment and come to an agreement, by the way? I would have been perfectly comfortable if people said Derek Chauvin was guilty of manslaughter. I'm comfortable with that charge. I'm not comfortable with the lies that have been told repeatedly about who this man was. If you care about black lives, if you're watching us thinking, Candace, I just care about black lives, then why can't we discuss black criminality at the same time? Because usually on the other end of black criminality is a black victim. That was the case with Jacob Blake. That was the case over and over again with George Floyd. That's also the case with, and let's talk about the person that was trending all last night and all this morning, Ma'Khia Bryant, is that her name? The woman, the young woman that they're now saying, a 16-year-old girl in Columbus, Ohio, who was shot on Tuesday by police. Did you guys see the clip of her mother? She was shot and killed by police because she was attempting to stab another girl. It's on camera. She was a knife-wielding maniac. But those details don't matter. Don't forget. Because her mother came out and said.
Now, that was an asinine comparison. Where were the campaigns for What is her name? I can't even remember her goddamn name. Why can't I remember her name? What is the reason why I can't remember her name?
We don't care.
Let me tell you something. We don't care.
Nobody was up in arms. That officer was potentially saving another young girl's life by shooting that girl. Nobody was up in arms about that. Oh, no, actually, people were at one point until they seen the footage. And I remember DJ Envy got called a coon, and I did a breakdown on that, and I was on the wrong end of that. But at the end of the day, nobody was outraged like that. And as soon as we figured it out and we seen, oh, this girl was about to stab somebody, we're like, oh, who cares? It's like she was literally about to stab another young girl. We're not having that. The cop was there to serve and protect. He was there to protect. Breonna Taylor is not the girl she's talking about. That girl was in her sleep, and people were trying to even defend the cops' right to do that because she was with some thug, some nigga that was an ex-convict or something, and the cops were after him. So they're like, or they were in the wrong apartment too, but they were trying to use his past, his criminal history to justify the cops running up there and shooting her. And they're like, oh, that's what you get for dating a thug. That's what people were legitimately saying. People want to justify all sorts of police murders, and it's like, make it make sense though. The one where the girl stabbed, where it was attempting to stab the girl, that made sense. There was no outrage, there was no looting, there was no media storm over that. People moved on. People didn't care. We seen it. We're like, okay, this is just.
Attempting to stab another girl. It's on camera. She was a knife-wielding maniac. But those details don't matter. Don't forget. Because her mother came out and said that Ma'Khia had a motherly nature about her. She promoted peace. Ma'Khia Bryant's mother wants you to know that the knife-wielding maniac that you saw is not who she really was. Maybe in that moment she was trying to kill somebody, but the point...
That is a mother-saving face for the image of her daughter. Of course she's going to say all those nice things. Her daughter could have had an emotional outburst and did not know how to control herself and just acted wild and violently, and that's the only time she heard of it. Who knows what that's the story with the mother. And the mothers are always going to protect their children. That's what the mother said. The mother, not the people, not the media, her mother. What are we doing here, Candace Owens?
That we should be focused on is that Ma'Khia Bryant liked to promote peace in her spare time, right? I mean, this is like, I feel like we have now tapped into fiction. Like now we have to just accept fiction. It doesn't matter because Ma'Khia Bryant was black and she died at the hands of a police officer, and that's all that matters now. People want to come out and they want to support Ma'Khia Bryant. Maybe she too, like George Floyd, will be buried into a gold casket.
Once again, different issues. George Floyd is when they say George Floyd is a symbol of justice. George Floyd, she wants to outline his criminal history, right? She wants to bring up all of his charges, right? He's a symbol of justice. Why does both of those statements go together? Or one's kind of a sentence, one's a statement. George Floyd was arrested for his wrongdoings. Justice served. You outlined his entire break and entering offense where he put the gun to the woman where she had a baby in her stomach because she was pregnant and blah, blah, blah. You outlined that whole incident. Why? Because it was recorded by the cops in the disclosure. Public record. Symbol of justice. Justice was served. He served time for his wrongdoings. He wasn't the best guy. He wasn't doing anything wrong when he got murdered. He wasn't armed. He wasn't trying to kill the police officer. He got killed in cold blood, wrongful doing. The cop is in jail. Justice. Symbol for justice, whether you like it or not. Doesn't have to be a perfect person with a pristine image for them to be the symbol of justice. It's what happened. You can't be mad at it. Live with it. It's life, man. You got to accept life.
Maybe eventually one day Nancy Pelosi will say that Ma'Khia Bryant's name will be synonymous with justice. Let me tell you what is actually happening in America at this time. And if you're a Black American, you better pay attention. Right now in America, the goal is to make sure that Black people love and support criminality. That is the goal. The express goal now is to make Black people believe that we should be in the streets, rioting, and looting and demanding justice for criminals, right? Because that is what these people are. They're criminals. George Floyd was in the process of committing a crime. I'm not saying he deserved to die. I don't think anybody deserved to die. I think he deserved to be arrested.
Yep,
they
like
attempted
most
to
people.
arrest him. Did you forget that part? Have you seen the full video of his arrest? The media refuses to show the full video that shows that the police tried to put.
All right, so now I don't get her argument, because she says she doesn't believe that he should have been killed. He should have been arrested. But then she's making an argument to see the full video. So should he have been killed once we see the full video? Well, we see the full video and be like, yep, murder that nigga. Is that what we're going to say after that?
Him into the vehicle multiple times, and he resisted arrest by saying, I'm claustrophobic, because he had just ingested fentanyl. Fentanyl, that thing that's 100 times more potent than morphine. He had just ingested it because he didn't want to again get caught with a controlled substance, as he had done repeatedly throughout his life. Let's ignore a testimony from his girlfriend who said that they were both addicted, which, by the way, that is sad. Drug addiction is sad. We can be talking about drug addiction. We should be talking about drug addiction. That would be a meaningful discussion. But instead, let's ignore all of these things that would help us fix Black America. Let's not talk about drug abuse. Let's not talk about drug dealers. Let's not talk about criminality. Let's not talk about why Ma'Khia Bryant had a knife and was trying to stab a woman to death. Let's just talk about Black victimhood, because the discussion about Black victimhood almost guarantees us that in the future, Black neighborhoods are only going to get worse. When you start celebrating criminals, that is, of course, what is going to be the end result. We're going to have more Black death. We're going to produce more Black failures, because we're not allowed to talk about the truth anymore. And Republican and Democrats are even saying that this is good, right? So let's not talk about it. It's just been agreed. The lie has been agreed upon. Don't say anything. If you tell the truth, Candace, you're a bad person. I don't care what I am called. Just because right now in this country we are facing a pandemic of cowardice, because people are too scared once the mob says that this is what must be said and these are the only things that can be said, because the media has now created a system, a successful system of propaganda where people don't even know what the truth is because the lie has been said over and over and over again. That does not mean that I'm going to back down to the truth. In fact, I think more than ever now, we need to have people that are willing to stand up and to say that what is happening in this country is wrong. What is happening in this country is backwards. None of these people that I mentioned are heroes.
I don't understand her need to continuously combat the point that they're not heroes. Nobody's saying they're heroes. That's what I don't understand. Nobody is saying they're heroes. They lost their life to police officers. That one person that we're just going to completely dismiss the girl that stabbed the other girl. We don't care about, nobody's talking about that girl. George Floyd in particular was a victim of police brutality. Whether you like it or not, Candace Owens, whether it's sensationalized in the media or not, Candace Owens, he was a victim of police brutality. Shitty person, criminal or not, he didn't deserve to die that night. You can't avoid that fact. And it doesn't seem like she tries to make that argument either. She just wants to hearken on the fact that he was a shitty individual, according to her, and his criminal record. That's all she wants to do, and just double down on that point. But it's completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. It had nothing to do with the matter. Now, this is probably the third video in the recent history that I've covered of Candace Owens. The other ones I kind of agreed with her points and her position on the matters. This, she completely bricked. Completely missed the mark on this one.
God damn.
It wasn't just media outrage and emotional blacks. Nope, it wasn't that. You were on the wrong end of this one, Candace Owens. We're going to wrap this one up, though. We have plenty more on the way. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit the stats. Whoa.
Shout out to LTTV.
Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We have plenty more on the way. Eternal Screen says, this is the one time she didn't make sense to me. Yep, this is the one time where she doubled down on that Republican media head type of... Jesus Christ, what am I trying to say? She was on code for her party in this one. That's a better way to phrase it. She was on code for her party on this one. Sometimes you want to stay conservative, Republican, double down on your issues, show how Republican and showing how Republican your takes are and how consistent you are Republican. Sometimes people double down with that type of shit in the media. That's probably what this one was, but she missed the mark completely on this one. What else do we have here in the comment section? We're going to wrap this one up, though. Yep. We out. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Love says she mixes the truth with a bunch of BS. Well, yeah. And a bunch of irrelevant points that have nothing to do with the matter. It may be correct. It may be right. But what does it have to do when it doesn't actually combat the matter at hand? But, yep, we out.